Hi, I'm Brienne. Most people try to paint every single leaf when they're painting trees, but I don't paint a single leaf. Instead, I paint trees as a collection of simple masses, and this is what makes them look believable. Here you can see an oil painting I did of a mass of different types of green trees. So what I thought I'd do today is do a watercolor version of this, so you can see how I paint and simplify the masses and finesse the edges. So basically, remember that trees are blobs with finesse. So let's get painting and I'll show you how. Like with every painting, I start with a value study, focusing on the value masses, being quick and deliberate. Then I am going to go to my watercolor paper and then draw out the composition more carefully, thinking of shape relationship. And then I'm going to start by tinting the lights of the sky. So the clouds, I want to have a warm white. And so that's why I tinted it with kind of a little bit of trans yellow oxide. Now I'm going to bring in the blue sky around the clouds. This first wash is meant to just tint the lights. So I'm trying to set the colors of the light values. So those Russian olives, I'm making them much cooler. I did that in my oil painting and I really liked it. So it's a mixture of a little bit of lavender, a little bit of yellow, and then some purple, but it's all very light. So consistency, paint consistency of tea, all right? And maybe a little bit of coffee. Now I'm dropping in some of the brighter yellows, and here I use Bright Yellow Lake from Michael Harding. And I'm not thinking of form at all at this stage. It's really just tinting, making various colors, having fun with it. As long as you keep it light with lots of water, you really can't mess up this stage. Bringing in more greens, and notice I'm varying the colors as I go. I'll add a little more blue, some reds, some, just variation. And just kind of, there's some lights I'm leaving behind, but most everything will get covered up eventually. I'm also going to splatter with a little bit of lavender at the end to just create texture and fun. Now I'm going to let this first wash dry completely before going on to the next stage. Here I'm getting larger pools of pigment, and more pigment, less water. And of Quin Rose, Cobalt Blue, Transparent Yellow Oxide is my primaries, and then I'll add various things. So for the cooler or the shadowed side of the Russian olive, I have the Vivid Blue from Michael Harding, and then a little lavender and purple again. So same things, just more pigment. And what I'm doing is creating form a little bit by getting variation in value. But notice I'm still keeping it very light. So paint consistency of coffee. If you haven't seen the tea to butter video, please watch my previous YouTube video about paint consistency. Okay, so I'm doing that with both of the main Russian olive trees, using my fingernail to scrape in for a little bit of texture. And this just sets this lighter value, and then there's a little bit of form. Now I'm going to go into the background, keeping it very simple, and again, following along with the composition of my oil painting because I prefer that to the reference photo. Okay. Now I'm going to start with this blob of the pine tree. What's important to note is it's an overall mass, right? But I'm finessing the edges to make it look like that pine. I'm not trying to get it exact. I'm just trying to get close. The edges help it to feel like a white pine. Now also notice how I'm finessing by going around and doing negative painting of the lighter bush in front. Or like here with the mass of shadow, I'm finessing the edge of the shadow as well. Those edges are what's important. It's kind of defines what this mass is. So now I'm bringing in the overall mass of trees. Again, anything that's light value, that's in front, I'm going to use negative painting. If you want to know more about negative painting, I also have another YouTube video about that. Okay, but overall, notice how I'm not worrying about each individual tree. That is a mass of probably, I don't know, 8 trees, okay? But that's not what I think of. I think of the value mass, and then how is it different from the lighter masses in front or the lighter mass of the sky behind. And I'm finessing the edge with suggestion of branches and trunks and that kind of stuff, but the main mass is just different. And it's varied greens. Look at the variation of green that's in my palette and that I put on the surface or on the painting. Now notice I'm also finessing the edge to indicate some of those grasses, those lighter grasses that are in front, using my fingernail to just scrape some of those and mess up that edge a little bit. You want it to be just a funky edge. Now, I'm using my fingernail to, again, add texture, varying the value and the color of these masses. Remember, you want to add variation of color of the greens to add interest. And then you want to add variation of value to add form and depth. So here you can see more finessing of the edge, and again, just indicating little bunches of leaves, not individual leaves, but just bunches. And you're going to see that at the edges of those massive trees. Also, finessing the edge around with using negative painting of that lighter bush in front, right? This is where the care comes in. This is where the finesse comes in. But then other than that, I can just paint big shapes, right? So I'm careful at the edges, not so much at the overall mass. I'm going to use a damp, clean synthetic brush to just kind of soften some of the edges. And then I can also use that same brush with some darker value pigment to create some detail with various branches again and trunks and that kind of stuff. And that just adds to the interest of the painting. And you can add as much or as little detail as you want. Another important point is adding more darks. Now this mass of trees right now is pretty damp. So I'm dropping in a thicker pigment in order to get some nice soft edges. But this just helps to create depth and to create form. Softening with my finger when needed, and then just adding details where I want. This process is very similar to a previous video that I did on painting masses of trees, but I did leafless trees, basically winter trees in the last version, and you should watch that. But notice how the process is very similar, whether it's a green tree or leafless trees. I had people ask me, and that's why I wanted to do this video. Okay, now with that big pine tree, I need to bring in the shadow side. But this time that pine tree is dry, it's not wet. So I bring in a shadow shape, then I use a damp, clean brush, just like before, and I soften some of the edges. So I prefer to do it when the mass is damp, but sometimes I just didn't get to it. So that's how I do it when it's on dry paper. Basically put a shape down and then soften an edge. Okay, now I'm going to splatter in those areas just to create texture and for fun. Adding more detail, again, add it wherever you want. Here, though, I want to always evaluate and compare to my value study. How am I going? And I notice that I haven't done the big foreshadow or foreground shadow. So that's my next step. This is why a value study is so important, because it allows me, it's a roadmap, basically telling me, okay, where do I go next? Then I look at my value study and know what maybe my next step is. When painting this big shadow shape, just like when I was painting the trees, I want to vary the green mixture and then paint big masses and finesse the edges to indicate grasses. And I can use these wonderful Chinese brushes to kind of do that. They have kind of rough edge bristles, which is wonderful for creating texture like this. Next, I'm going to drop some darks. Again, remember, value creates form and depth. So even within this shadowed shape, when you bring value variation, it brings depth to that shape. And so it actually looks like there's grasses with mass. All right, and now that sunlit portion of the grasses was way too flat. So it also needed variation. And so even though the variation of value is not as dark, that just helps to add texture. Now the painting is finished and I just need to add some of my highlights with the lilac. If you can learn to paint the masses first, then you can always finesse the edges and indicate a few leaves on the edge. And that will actually make your trees look more believable, and it's easier. So have fun, and next time you go to paint trees, think of blobs with finesse. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. If you would like to learn more from me online, please visit my website at travelingcolorstudio.com. I would really like to see you there. Have a good week and happy painting.